Hey, you see, as you're looking at below there, our guest for tonight. So glad to have Andrew Gentry in the house. He's a new addition to BYU's offensive line, but he's not new to college football. That's for sure.
Nope.
He's 6'7". We have you listed at 327. Is that close in?
I've actually lost a little bit of weight since I've been at BYU. They wanted me to drop down a little bit, so I'm like 315 right now.
So 315.
Yep.
Hey,
Nice.
BYU's last two left tackle draft picks were all around 315. So
Yep.
it seems like a good way. Junior in eligibility, right?
Yep.
So, which is fantastic. He's been at Michigan the last 3 years. Next month, he'll report to his first fall camp for the Cougars, but he's been here working out with the Cougs for a while.
Yep.
And Andrew and I got a chance to meet because he came on our Fan Fest show up in Idaho
Yes,
Falls.
sir.
So it was my pleasure to interview him there. It's my pleasure to have him here on the Wise Guys. Andrew, this is the largest BYU-related podcast in the world.
Nice.
It goes all over. We have people on that check in with us from Japan and South America and all over the place.
That's
Only
awesome.
can BYU have a BYU-centric podcast and have it go all over the world.
No doubt.
Because that's the way it is. Welcome to the Wise Guys, Andrew.
Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here. You guys are awesome, so really pumped to be here.
Well, and I know you came early, right before Brian and I even got here.
I did. I misread the text, but it was super easy.
I was just thinking, now this is my guy already. Like, well, if it says 6:40, I'm coming at 6, right?
There you go.
That's what TJ likes, the line coach, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, summer workouts are underway. You've been with the team. Last time I saw you were with Jada, the other tackle. You guys be bookends for us. What's impressed you the most about your time here at BYU so far?
Yeah, I think the thing that's impressed me the most is just to see the change that's happened over the last, I guess for me, really 5 years. You know, coming out of high school, seeing what it was like having a brother that had played here. Not to say that anything was bad before that, but being independent, having that, not really having the goal of making it to a conference championship and getting into the playoff being really tough. It just wasn't the expectation to make it to the playoff, right? The big expectation was, all right, let's see if we can make a New Year's Six game. But now I think, especially after last season, you really see a shift towards, hey, let's make it to the playoff and let's go win the playoff. And that's the way that our coaches coach. That's the way the players are working. And so that's really impressed me. And that's a big reason why I wanted to come to BYU, because obviously I've been in a culture at Michigan that was pushing for national championships every year and won a national championship while I was there. And so I didn't want to leave that. I didn't want to go to a culture that wasn't going to be pushing for national championships. And BYU is. I really firmly believe that we're working for that goal. I see a lot of similarities from the team that I played on in 2023 at Michigan to what BYU is doing right now. And so just the level of urgency that's present right now at BYU is definitely something that's been on my mind.
And your dad played here as well, right? And your brother
played basketball.
So is it like a home? Were they like, oh, thank you. He's having to come to Jesus moment. Point intended.
You know, honestly, my whole family was always super supportive wherever I ended up, right? Because I'm originally committed to Virginia, then flipped while I was on my mission to go to Michigan. And so no matter where I've decided to go or gone, you know, they've always been super supportive and really encouraging of whatever I wanted to do in making that decision. But you could definitely say there's a lot of excitement in the family as well. When I told my brother I was going to be coming back, I live with him right now, so it's been fun to be back with him. Yeah, so it's been fun to be back with family. And then also, I think my dad was excited. My grandparents were excited. Everybody's been excited that I've been here, but there's been nothing but support no matter where I've been.
Welcome home.
Yeah, welcome. And you mentioned that you had signed originally because Bronco was at Virginia,
Yep. Uh-huh.
and there was some familiarity there, and they were trying to build that, into an ACC power back when you originally signed, and then he left, and then Jim Harbaugh recruits you,
Mm-hmm.
and now you go from Michigan to BYU. And now Jim's gone,
right,
from Michigan. And you mentioned this a little bit. I want you to take us a little deeper. Why no to BYU then, and yes to Virginia, and then we understand Bronco was not there anymore, so then to Michigan. But so it was no to BYU, I'm going to Michigan, and now it's like, no, Michigan, even though you want me to come back, I'm going to BYU. What was the big decision-making process like for that?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me there was a number of different things, right? Being a Latter-day Saint and having the commitment to the faith was definitely always important to me, right? So I always wanted to find a school that was supportive of me going on a mission, and I was grateful that obviously Virginia with Bronco Mendenhall, they were super supportive, and then Michigan was as well. Coach Harbaugh was always great with that. And then, also though, I really wanted, like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to win. I didn't want to go to a program that wasn't going to win, that I wasn't going to win a lot of games at. And so coming out of high school, like you mentioned, Bronco was really pushing Virginia in a really good direction. I felt really comfortable with what they were doing and really excited about what they were doing. When I was a senior in high school, they went to the Orange Bowl that year, I believe, against Florida. So really a lot of good things were happening at Virginia at that time, and felt like I could go there and build on that, right? And so made that decision, come out of high school. Obviously Bronco leaves. Then say no to BYU the second time, going to Michigan just because of where Michigan was at. Coach Harbaugh was super supportive of me being on a mission. Obviously came out and recruited me while I was a missionary, so was super supportive and excited about me coming to Michigan. And I was excited to go to a team that had just been to the college football playoff and looked like they were going to be in the college football playoff for a while, which we were those first 2 years that I was there, and obviously won that national championship. And then I think you fast forward to last year, I guess back up now, but fast forward. And, after that last season when Coach Harbaugh wasn't there, not that anything was bad at Michigan, just, wasn't the same Michigan that I had committed to. And I think Michigan's a great program, nothing against Coach Moore or any of the coaching staff that's there now. It was just different than the Michigan that I had committed to. And so wanted to explore different options again. And then, like I mentioned, BYU is now really pushing, being in the Big 12, to really be a powerhouse, right? I don't think the days are here anymore where it's just, let's see if we can, win a few games here and there, and let's get bowl eligible. Being bowl eligible is like the bare minimum. And then after that, it's let's see how far we can really go and push this thing. And that's what I want, right? I don't think it should even be in the back of our minds, are we going to make a bowl game or not? It should be, how late are we playing in January? And that's my goal.
Hey, Bilo, did you hear him say Coach Harbaugh came out and saw me on my mission?
Yeah, I thought.
So when you were gone, you stopped in and you left. So my son-in-law played at Stanford for Jim, or was recruited by Jim.
Okay.
Dallas Lloyd.
Yeah.
You might know Dallas.
Yeah.
But safety there, they were phenomenal. They run a Rose Bowl while they were there. Christian McCaffrey was the offensive captain. Dallas was the defensive captain on those teams over there. But they have a story where he just showed up at their house one night. And this is how Jim recruits, right?
Yep.
He just becomes part of the family. He just shows up at their house, and they were kind of sitting around, and they said, where are you staying tonight? He goes, I don't have a hotel yet. And so you just like, we don't have a hotel. We have a guest room here. Almost, I got to offer this to him, right? Yep. There's no way he's going to say okay. And Jim's like, okay.
Sounds like
and he stays over. And then Dallas like, so now coach is recruiting me and we're sitting at the breakfast table eating cereal together. And I'm like, this dude is awesome, right? So tell us about him coming out to your mission. Because he is a phenomenal recruiter, isn't he?
He is. Really good. Yeah, so, it was kind of a crazy week when that all happened, right? So I think it happened on like a Thursday that Bronco Mendenhall stepped down. So obviously as missionaries, right, you can't talk to your family till Monday. So for me, that space of time between Thursday and Monday, I got some emails from my family, and so I knew kind of what was going on, but still was in the dark about a lot of reasons as to why he left, all those different things. And so Monday rolls around, I talk to my family, and they're like, hey, look, this is why Bronco stepped down. And these are the schools that we've reached out to, because I told my family before my mission, I said, hey, if Bronco's not the coach at Virginia, I really think it's time to reopen and make another decision. Mm-hmm. And so they knew that. And so they talked to Coach Harbaugh and they talked to BYU. Those were the two schools that they had talked to. And Coach Harbaugh immediately, when my dad told him that's what's happening, he was like, all right, well, where's Andrew? Like, I'm going to go fly out and see him. And I was like, well, hold on. Like, there's some rules here. There's some stipulations. Like, don't get ahead of yourself too much. And he's like, well, let me know as soon as I can come visit him. He's like, you probably can't visit him, but we'll talk to him and see. And luckily I had a mission president that really encouraged Coach Harbaugh to come out. He said he really should. He should see what you're doing. This is not just a good opportunity for you to make this decision, but just for the church in general to see, a very prevalent coach in football, not just college football, but all of football, to see what a missionary does every day. And obviously he's very familiar with the church, being at Stanford, recruited a lot of missionaries, and so was very supportive of that. But, it was, I can't remember what day it was. I think it was like a Wednesday. We were at the University Mall working the giving machines, and we scheduled it where Coach Harbaugh could fly in, flew into the Provo airport, drove right up to Tucano's. We met for 45 minutes.
I love it.
Yeah, met for 45 minutes at Tucano's, and he's awesome. I mean, Coach Harbaugh, the stories that you hear about him, they're true, right? I think that's the thing.
He's a little crazy,
a little quirky, but he's the best, and he wears his heart on his sleeve, and the type of guy that you see, he doesn't fake one thing and be another thing. That's just who he is, and that's who he was in that lunch. Was just super honest with me, was great with me, asking me so many questions about my mission. I think we talked about the mission way more than recruiting. And then at the very end was like, hey, so like, what's your good decision? I really want you at Michigan. I was like, yeah, I'm going to come to Michigan. He's like, great, that's awesome. Now go back and start teaching people again. And he left, we left, and that was that. And then didn't really stay in contact with him the rest of my mission. I know he stayed in contact with my parents really consistly, went back to their house even though I wasn't there. And
but did he stay over? That's the question.
He didn't stay over. It was a quick little trip then, but I'm sure he would have if my parents would have asked.
Right, for sure. That's awesome. That's a great story. And I really, shout out to your mission president for allowing that.
I think that's fantastic
for that reason. Because when Uncle B told me, I was like, wait a minute, because I'm not LDS. I'm like, I I thought they can't talk to nobody. Like, I know they can't have any visitors.
Well,
so,
back in the old days,
makes sense.
like if you would have gone when you were in school on a mission, you've been able to talk to your family on Mother's Day and Christmas. And then now they can communicate with their families every week, and it's just it's just more real world. I think a lot of great changes.
Absolutely.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, so now that you've been under Kalani and also Coach Harbaugh, give us some differences or some similarities.
Yeah, I mean, I guess starting with the differences, I mean, Coach Harbaugh is unlike anybody I've ever met before, right? I mean, just very quirky. Just tells you random stories all the time. Like, you could be talking about something completely different, and Coach Harbaugh will all of a sudden, he has a story for everything. I swear, that guy's just got a million stories stored up in the brain somewhere. and then you just all of a sudden, you'll be talking about something, and he would tell us stories about the bees that he had, chickens, like all these random things. Like, Coach Harbaugh, he had stories and could relate anything back to football. And so that's different, right? Just was different in that regard. And then, whereas Kalani is very much, he's very down to earth. And, I would say, like, he seems like outgoing, but compared to Coach Harbaugh, not as eccentric as Coach Harbaugh, maybe a little more reserved. Obviously, Coach Sitake's not a reserved person, but when it comes to stories and different things like that, not quite like the crazy Coach Harbaugh would be. But I think similarities, they both just love football. And you can tell that they both love football. I don't think I've met two people that love football more than Coach Harbaugh and Coach Sitake. And they're in there all the time studying. They care about their guys, too. That's the other thing, is both of them, you can tell that they love their players, and the players come first. And that's one thing I can say at both programs that isn't true for every program, right? There's a lot of coaches that put themselves in front of their players and are always looking for where they can make more money or do different things. And Coach Sitake and Coach Harbaugh both really put the players first, prioritize the players and their needs and their families. We're checking in on families. I mean, because, we tell the stories of Coach Harbaugh and how he recruited, but Coach Sitake was the same way. And even when I committed to, Virginia in the first place and then committed to Michigan, there's a lot of coaches that probably would have been pretty upset, especially with the family pedigree that I had at BYU.
For sure. My
dad playing there, my grandpa, my uncle, my brother. It just seemed natural for me to go to BYU. And then for me twice to turn them down when they had been really supportive. It would have been really easy for a coach to say, we're never talking to that kid again. Yeah. We don't care. Like, they turned us down twice. And as soon as I entered the portal, the first person I heard from was Coach Sitake, right? And so that's who the kind of coach that both of them are, is just caring about the players and building great relationships.
And doesn't your recruiting story, because I always have this argument, I always say to people, you don't commit to the logo, you commit to the coach. I always believe that in my heart. And your story kind of shows that
illustrates it. Is that right on the money?
100%. And I think that's part of the reason I left Michigan. Again, no offense to Coach Moore, no offense to anything that's going on there, because I love Coach Moore. I love that program at Michigan still. But, it's...
You went to play for Jim Harbaugh.
I went to play for Jim Harbaugh.
And now you've come to BYU to play for Kalani.
Yeah,
and for TJ in that group. So
100%.
Hey, BYU offensive lineman Andrew Gentry on the Wise Guys, presented by Brady Plus, supplies plus support, by Eddie, HR and payroll software built for small businesses. See how Eddie can serve your team at eddie.com. Travis Hansen, the keynote speaker tonight at the Deseret News High School Awards. And by Mountain America Credit Union. Apply for your BYU credit card featuring a $100 bonus at any Mountain America branch or macu.com/BYU Visa. And get your $100 bonus and get a BYU Visa card, which is really, really cool. And remember the Wise Guys, distributed by the Deseret News. Andrew, you played 26 games at Michigan. Mm-hmm. Starts against Illinois, Michigan State. What was it like playing for the Wolverines? I've been on the stadium floor. I broadcast a game from there where I was the sideline. So I've been there with 100,000+ folks in the stands. What's it like to play there?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty surreal. I don't know if you can really put it into words. But I remember walking onto the field at Michigan and being, wow, this is big. And then all of a sudden when you walk in, when it's filled with 110,000 people, you're like, wow, this is really big. And all eyes are on you. But it's just a surreal experience. I mean, it kind of feels, you hear the stories of the Colosseum back in, in Rome and whatnot, and just people yelling and the way that it's built. That's what they took their inspiration from, was building like a Colosseum. There's one way on the field, one way off the field. That's how they wanted it to be. Obviously led to some issues at Michigan that we won't get into. But it's fun, right? It's kind of like a going into battle. But knowing that you got 110,000 people watching, it can be nerve-wracking, but at the same time, it's just so much fun. I think it's fun to go out there and then play for the Wolverines and then those people watching you and supporting you.
It's a great tradition. It's one of the blue blood programs of all time. In that league, you play in a lot of great places. You'll play in some great places in the Big 12 as well.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite place outside of the stadium at home that you played in? Maybe not even in the Big Ten, but is there a place that you played where you went, wow, this is a cool place?
Yeah, 2 come to mind immediately. So unfortunately, I didn't get to go to Ohio State last year because of an injury. I never heard that one's cool, right? I mean,
I went on a recruiting visit for the Michigan-Ohio State game at Ohio State.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so it's, you know how it goes. But I'd say the 2 most memorable for me, the first one, just for scenic reasons, is Washington. That one's pretty unbelievable. Yeah, you got Mount Rainier in the background, right on the lake. It's unbelievable in terms of just a scenic setting. But then I would say one of the most memorable was Beaver Stadium playing Penn State.
Yeah, 110,000 there, right?
Yep, 110,000. And that was right after the whole sign stealing allegation at Michigan. And so you had 110,000 people that didn't just want you to lose, but literally hated you and did not want anything to do with you. I don't think I've ever felt more hate in my life, but that was just such a fun and memorable game back in 2023 playing at Beaver Stadium. Again, just a traditional place. But
very cool.
It was cool.
And there's I mean, I can't say that like BYU.
Where's your favorite? Where's your favorite you ever played?
Oh, my favorite?
I mean, Utah's a pretty crazy environment.
Wyoming.
Oh, you like playing against those crazy people?
Yeah, that's why. This is why. Because at 11 o'clock in the morning, everybody was drinking and they were having. It was a party.
The crazy thing is it was a night game.
and
they're drunk by noon.
And their mascot. I call him the mascot. He's not a mascot. He's just a fan.
The barrel guy.
Yeah, Captain Adjo. I think that's his name. Yeah. He's naked. And just with a barrel. And he comes over to our sideline. He's it was basically a party. It wasn't that they used as a football. Like the football game was just the venue. You know. So and we won pretty good. I like that. I'd like that. Against Oklahoma, playing in the Cowboy Stadium.
That was cool. I did that game too. I broadcast that one. But
that was my first D1 game. Because I went to junior college first, and to play in an NFL stadium.
That was the first college game in Jerry Jones Stadium. Was that one? Yeah, and Andrew may have watched that because you used to watch BYU.
Oh yeah, no, I remember that game.
He's too young to watch my favorite one because we opened our season back at Georgia between the hedges in Athens with Herschel Walker playing tailback for them, and we had them tied with like 3 minutes to go, and they drove down and kicked a 53-yard field goal and beat us 17-14. But the environment between the hedges there at Sanford Stadium was pretty incredible.
Environments make a huge difference.
88,000 then. I think it seats 96 now, but 88,000 is like this. It's like steep. Like I feel like they're hanging over you.
Oh, yeah.
It was really cool.
I mean, they're probably the worst, I would say, environment from a fan standpoint, it would be Utah, right? Because they like literally hate us, and we hate them too. Well, I don't know about you guys.
Andrew's gonna witness that. But it's in our place this year. But then next year he's gonna get to.
I'm excited.
Yeah. And so like playing like the stories that you've just said. In like with those fans and those stadiums that are historic, like that will prepare you pretty much. And so instead of going down that route, what I want to ask you is like, what do you think the preparation being in the Big Ten and coming to the Big 12? And say this how you want to say it. I don't want to get you in trouble, but people always talk about there's a drop off, right, when it comes to different conferences. And since you've been around the program and a Big 12 program, come and give me some of the similarities, maybe some of the differences that you've seen.
Yeah, so I mean, it's tough to say exactly, right? Not having played a game yet, of knowing the whole, people do mention the whole drop off thing. But I think at the end of the day, Power 4 is Power 4, right? You go and you see the facilities now, and maybe, I'll say, Michigan, right? My locker room the first 2 years there wasn't great at Michigan, but then all of a sudden we did a $14 million renovation, have a golf simulator and a bowling alley.
Yeah.
Right? So you can add those things, and then, the level of competition I think then you go into next. And, I think maybe the only argument you could make is when you're in the Big Ten, consistently you're playing really, really high level of competition. Yeah. I mean, 1 week you're playing Oregon, the next week you're playing Penn State, the next week you're playing Ohio State, right? So you play 3 teams like that, you're going to play against 8 or 9 first rounders when you play against teams like that, right? Whereas the Big 12, though, you're still going to play against first rounders, maybe not as consistently, but at the end of the day, the level of drop off in college football is still, it's pretty minute, right? When you go from team to team, conference to conference. And so I don't see any drop off, right? I tell people all the time, I had every Power 4 school. I had an offer from every single Power 4 school, or sorry, not every single Power 4 conference while I was in the portal, right? So if that was a big issue to me, I would have stayed in the Big Ten, right? In teams that were competing for Big Ten championships. And, I could have gone to the SEC and played in that league if I wanted to. But in my opinion, I said, BYU's got just as good a shot as any of those people to go.
And the thing is, the top of these leagues are all very good.
Oh yeah.
And the bottom of these leagues are all not good.
Yeah.
Right.
That's,
Like
that's
the bottom of Big Ten's not good.
every
The bottom of Big
conference.
12's not good. Right? They're not good.
And I think you see last year everybody was saying, right, you go to that playoff game with Arizona State and Texas, and I think, we got worked by Texas last year at Michigan. And I think everybody just kind of assumed that Texas was going to go in there and just work Arizona State and just be, hey, welcome to the SEC.
Yeah.
Like, this is big boy football. And Arizona State should have won that game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they
Yeah,
really should have. If it's not
that's
for that
true.
4th and 18.
The top of the league, and maybe the top of the Big Ten's got a few more, like it's a little deeper at the top.
Exactly.
And the middle's probably very similar, and the bottom is probably very similar.
Yeah.
So there's a couple more teams, and that's how it goes to the top. If you're the top in this league, you can compete.
Something
TCU was in the national championship game a couple years ago.
Yeah.
They beat us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
BYU offensive lineman Andrew Gentry's on the Wise Guys live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and wiseguys.com. We'll be available as a podcast tomorrow morning, wherever you get your podcasts. So glad to have him on here. Brett, you had a question
Well,
for him.
I was going to say we always talked about the differences in conference from our opinion. Uncle B and I it's just the height, weight, and speed difference. So like talent wise, which you can make an argument that those three combined, can increase talent, but really the differences that you see, especially when I played in the Mountain West. Like I remember playing Pac-10 schools and wondering why are their corners like 5 inches taller than our receivers?
But Andrew, you got to realize that everybody's corners were 5 inches taller than Brett. And the fact that he could start at corner against Oklahoma at this height tells you how skilled he was, right?
I'm 5'6". I play corner.
Dang. They're
Actually, wait, stand up.
Yeah, this is okay. I don't know if we can see. Can we see this? That's what I'm talking about right there. That's and Andrew, are you 6'7", right?
6'7", 6'8".
6'7", 6'8", yeah.
Now I told them that if you sit down and if I stand up, where's the regular? Where's this shot?
It's right there. There you go. There you
If
go.
I stand up
see.
and while he's sitting down, I could almost pull it off. Maybe this was higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I put before I went over there, Andrew. I put your chair down a little bit, and I put Belo's up a little bit. And he's like, "Do I need to stand?" I'm like, "No, you're fine. We are who we are, right?" So
Six, 7.
it's all good. So, we talked a lot about where you've been. What are you looking most forward to when you take the field for BYU in a couple of months?
I mean, winning, right? That's the biggest thing that I think something that Coach Harbaugh really did instill in us is he's like, everybody talks about having fun while you play football, and he's like, you don't have fun unless you're winning.
Oh, that's
and
so
he's
true.
like, and that's what I agree with, right? I'm looking forward to winning, but we got great guys on this team too, and so you do it with a great group of people around you because it can be miserable to win if you don't have a good coach around you and great people around you. And BYU hands down has just great people around him, great human beings that I want to be around in the locker room, great human beings that I want to be coached by. And so I'm looking forward to winning with those guys, right? Because that's how you create fun memories. People don't remember teams that go 4-8, but that had the most fun.
Right? Yeah, that's so true.
But they remember teams that go out there and they win. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Is I want to go win, and I'm competitive, right? Competitive by nature, and again, like I mentioned, I've come from a school that the standard is national championships, right? And so, in my mind, nothing has changed mentality-wise for me. And so I'm just excited to get out there and go play and do whatever I can to help the team win. I mean, that's the biggest thing too. Whatever my role is, whatever I'm doing is doing the best I can to come out with more points than the other team. And if you do that, then things go pretty well for you.
Yeah, absolutely. You won a ring playing for Michigan. He got one.
Oh yeah,
beating Michigan.
Yeah, we played Michigan. We played Michigan.
Yeah.
I was gonna wear it tonight. Just in honor of Andrew in Michigan.
You should have, yeah.
And I was going to tell Andrew to bring his.
Yeah.
But then I went to put mine on, and I'm too fat, so I was like, no. We're not doing the ring thing tonight.
Not doing the ring thing.
My knuckles are too fat. Can't do it.
I would have liked to see that.
Actually, here's the crazy thing. So I weighed like 188 now. I played at 208. And why does my ring not go on now? My fingers are fatter, but I'm skinnier. I don't get it. I'm messed up.
That is weird.
I don't know. Can you get rings stretched out? I think you can.
Probably could. Yeah.
I need to get my ring stretched out.
Or you just put it around your neck.
One of our AFRs, I'm going to wear it.
Yeah.
So I want to see yours before we get to the season this year. We'll compare rings. That's pretty cool.
For sure.
So, you played in the Michigan Ohio. You've been part of a Michigan Ohio State game 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. You missed this trip this last year to Ohio State. It's a pretty intense rivalry.
It is.
I mean, these teams, I've been to one.
Yep.
They hate each other with a passion. BYU Utah, this rivalry because your family's a BYU family. They hate each other.
Yep.
The fans do, I should say.
The fans do.
Because the players respect each other.
Uh-huh.
Do some of the players grew up together, right? But he hates the players too. But do you feel like playing and having been part of that much of a rivalry has prepared you to be part of this BYU Utah thing the next 2 years?
I think so. Yeah. And I think maybe bring a little bit different mentality to it as well. Obviously there is a hatred towards it here, but I don't think there's anything quite like that Michigan-Ohio State rivalry, right? Because I walked in here and I was like, oh, so we just hate Utah, huh? Like, you can't tackle. Like, oh, like we grew up, like you said, right? Guys grew up with them and whatnot. But I mean,
those aren't real Cougars, then.
Good. All right, that's what I said.
Those are probably transfers, from the transfer portal.
Yeah. Coach Sitake does a great job of teaching gospel principles of, hey, you love your enemies and whatnot. I will say that's a tough pill for me to swallow. It's a tough pill for me to learn because I'm from a school where you absolutely hate your enemies and you wish no good upon them. And I think that's pretty evident as the Michigan-Ohio State game ended last year. And coaches have all made comments about that game. They all ask, were you upset about how the game ended? It's like, there's no love lost between those schools. You can do whatever and say whatever. And that's just kind of the way that works at that rivalry. And so I think for my mentality, that's what I came in with is, you hate your rivals, right? You come in and it's bad blood, between you and your rivals consistently and constantly. But at the same time, trying to embrace the culture here that BYU has said of loving your enemies, because there's a lot of good to be said with that as well.
Yeah. It's interesting. Who do we have? We were talking to about this where they were just like, no, in between the white lines and between whistles, we want to dominate them, right? We want to show our strength, and we literally want to beat the living crap out of them, right?
Yep.
In between the whistles, we're put our hand out and help them up.
Yeah.
Because we're going to play with ultimate sportsmanship, which I think actually gets in people's heads.
I think it does.
They're like, what?
Yeah.
Like I'm all going nuts out here, and he's just playing within himself, and they're kicking our butts. I think it almost grinds it in more. I think Kalani's philosophy is we can be gentlemen and sportsmen,
100%,
and we can beat the crap out of them.
That would be hard for me. That mentality is hard for me. My mentality was between 0 and 60 minutes. I'm trying to kill you. I'm trying to absolutely kill you. After that, we're cool. Unless you play for Utah.
Yeah. So, and Andrew, you play an interesting position. I want you to take us inside your head here for a minute, because with Bilo, he's out there on the corner, and like it's kind of a speed matchup, and sometimes it's physical, but he's got to run with guys, and he's got to break on the ball, and that's what he's got to do. Your job at offensive tackle is somebody going to line up across from you, whether he's going to be most of the time he's going to be outside of you, right? And you are going to have a physical, man-to-man battle every single solitary play for 60 minutes. How do you get your mind ready for that, and how can you sustain that for 60 minutes?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's an interesting point you bring up, because I've actually talked to a lot of corners. I think it's interesting, but people, they might not understand this, but I think there's a lot of similarities to playing corner and playing offensive line, because you're on an island. And that's the tough part, is you're on an island a lot. And the other thing is, if your name's getting called a lot, you're probably not doing very well.
No, you don't get recognition for the good things.
They don't even throw your way. That's the best thing you could ever do.
That's the best thing, and nobody will never know. And then the one or two things that you do poorly, like give up a touchdown, PI, the whole world is like, this guy sucks.
Yeah,
right? It's horrible.
So if a defensive end beats you around the edge or takes you upfield and cuts underneath and sacks the quarterback, everybody knows that you missed the ball.
100%.
But if you stalemate him at the line of scrimmage, he never even gets upfield.
Yeah.
Does anybody really notice? No. I do.
Yeah, I mean,
but does the normal
person, I don't think, does 99%.
So how do you keep it going?
So I think for me, the biggest thing is you just learn to embrace it, right? You learn to embrace your job and what you're doing. And for me, that's been what I've done since I was a kid, right? Is I played offensive line and being a protector, right? So I really don't care what the fans see or, what the broadcasters see or whatever, who sees it, right? I care that my quarterback's staying upright, my running backs have lanes to run through, right? Those are the guys that I care about, because they'll notice, right? I mean, Jake's going to notice if he's on his back, you know what I'm saying, right? And so my job is to protect him and keep him upright. But at the end of the day, right, I think the biggest preparation just comes from really just making sure that you're mentally prepared, knowing your opponent. I mean, I'm sure you could probably speak on that at corner, right? Everybody does something a little different. But if you can figure out what your defender does, I mean, a lot of times defenders, I don't know if it's the same for wide receivers, if you're not elite, you have one or two things that you're really, really good at. And if you can find out how to stop those one or two things, you have a pretty good game, right? And then it's playing that mental game the entire game of figuring out what their next move is and prepping yourself. And as the game goes along, adapting and seeing how the game plays. And so for me, right, it's fun, right? It's almost a battle to constantly see, how is this game going to change? What can I do to stalemate my defender even better? What can I study in film to see exactly how my defender is going to play? So I know his top three moves no matter what they are. Because at the end of the day, if you have those top three figured out, unless the defender is elite, going to be high first round, then maybe you figure out a fourth. But if you have 4, I can almost guarantee that any offensive lineman can play really, really well. And obviously you're going to get beat someplace, right? There's really good defenders out there.
And you do, I don't think the average fan understands how much work you guys do. Like I just stopped in the office the other day, and my son Gavin Fowler was sitting with Clegg, and they were going through film, and Gavin would stop the film, and he'd say, okay, what do you think this offensive set, what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah.
And he was saying, well, I think this looks like it's a run-based set, and I've got to watch for a crack, for a double team down, because they've got a wing lined up here. And Gavin's like, that's exactly right. With the backfield, the set where they're at, do you think the run's coming at you, or do you think it's going away from you? I think it's going to go away from me. Okay, so what are you going to do if it does go away from you? This is what I'm going to do. Then they would run the film, and Gavin would go, you're exactly right. There's so much of that. So it's not just brute strength physical.
Oh, yeah.
How much of that is a part of what you do in a game prep, and how much is just getting physically prepared to go?
I would say it's probably about, when you boil it down to time, it's 90% of it in college football.
Wow.
Because nowadays you can't be on the field that long. Right? I think they've adjusted rules, right, to where you can't be on the field and your body physically can't take that much beat up. And so honestly, I would say in the game of college football, and then especially in the NFL of guys I've talked to, in the NFL, they rarely ever hit. If you're a veteran, you're not putting pads on to go play or to go in practice that way. And so in college, it's really adapting to that way too. It really is now, especially with NIL and stuff. You got guys saying, well, I can't get hurt, and coaches don't want to hurt players that they've invested millions of dollars in. And so it's becoming more of that. And so I'd say 90%. For the good players, it should be 90%, right? It should be the meetings that you have with your coaches, but then additional, you really need to be studying it a lot, again, because if you can figure out the mental aspect of what your defender is going to do or what the offense is going to do, just like you were describing, then it gives you such an advantage, right? If you know what they're going to do, now it's just, all right, can I be athletic enough to just get to where I need to be? And then if you are, then that's how you win the reps.
And see, Uncle B, like Andrew's making my point. Like, this was a while ago, years ago. Remember when the corners would always rotate?
Yeah.
And it would piss me off, because I'm like, as a corner, how can I gauge my opponent? I mean, film can only do so much, but by the middle to the end of the first quarter, like what you said, I've seen everything that he can provide to me. So I've always felt that was a disadvantage to corners with having them rotate, because it's not the same, like on the field. Like, how would that impact you if you were rotating in that way?
Well, I'd be frustrated.
Right.
Yeah, because for me, again, like I mentioned earlier, I think, if I can get 4 pass protections against the same guy and 4 run blocks, I feel like I have a really good flow for the game.
You're getting a rhythm and a flow.
You get a rhythm and a flow, and I think from then on, it's going to be a mental mistake on my part if I get beat, or just the guy beat me just because he's a really good player, right? But if at that point, in the games I've played in, it's I get those first 4 in, and then it's like, all right, I know what I'm doing. I got a feel for the game now. I know what this defender's going to do. I know exactly what he's going to play. And coming into the game, right, you should have an idea, and then you get that feel for it. And then after that, it should be, all right, now let's just go play football. That's
good stuff. So I kind of have this theory that really good offensive lines that dominate have at least one guy on the line that's almost certifiably crazy.
Right.
Like there's got to be one guy that kind of, you have to have a bunch of thinkers that are really physical and good, but you have to have the one guy that's just nuts enough that the whole level of the offensive line is up there. Yeah. Have you figured out who that guy yet is for this?
I don't know if I have yet. It's been tough for me, right? Because I was out in spring. I was watching, but it's hard to get a gauge on guys in spring.
Right.
But I think we've definitely got a couple crazy guys out there that could go out there and raise it a little bit. One that comes to mind, Waylon Lapuahu. He wasn't in spring at all either. Coming back from an injury, but he's from what I can tell and film I've seen, I could see that coming from him. Just an experienced guy too, but he also knows the offense better than almost anyone in that building, right? Because he's played so many games and started so many games here. But we got a really good offensive line, and I'm excited. That was a big reason I came here, was to go play for an offensive line that competes at a high level, and I think BYU's doing that.
When my oldest Kellen was starting at free safety here, one day he came home from practice. I go, "How'd practice go today, Kel?" He goes, "Oh, good. Ray Fanga punched me in the face mask today." Ray was our left tackle. And I go, "Well, why would Ray do that?" He goes, "Dad, it's Ray Fanga." I was like, okay, that's our guy. That's the guy. That's the crazy guy. So, what are you guys working on specifically right now as an offensive line unit here in the off season? It's not really ever off season, right. but you guys are doing a lot of things on your own. You're working with the training staff, on the strength staff, who do a phenomenal job here. Like, what are some of the folks that our listener, some of the things you're doing that our folks out here and listening on the podcast can understand what you're doing to get ready.
Yeah, I think the big thing, right, as an offensive line, you play as one, but at the same time, too, the things that a tackle does is very different from the things that a guard does, which is very different than the things that a center does. So I think in the offseason, the big thing has been getting together as tackles. Today right after the lift, the tackles all got together, and a big thing that we've been working is just pass protection. That's the thing that's an art, right? Run blocking, like you said, if you're crazy enough and you're strong enough, you can usually get the job done in run blocking pretty well. But pass protection is really, they don't pay left tackles to go run block in the NFL. They pay left tackles to protect the quarterback.
They pay him to not hit Patrick Mahomes.
Right? Exactly,
Right.
Exactly. And so that's been a big thing that Coach Woods has emphasized, and a big thing that we've gone out and really taken upon ourselves to be really good at. Not just to be good at, to be great at. And so there have been a lot of guys out there working, but just getting back in a set, getting comfortable with it, keeping your feet in the ground, just so many different things that just trying to get us to click and be ready to go while the season comes around, that we can roll and be some of the best pass protectors in the country.
I've always found that, especially when I got here at BYU, that it didn't matter how much hours I spent film-wise or even on the field, where me and my safeties, because the other corner he's on the side, he doesn't really matter, right? But when it came to my linebacker and whatever safety was on my side, us three always had to have this cohesive, unspoken, connection, right?
Yeah.
And I found that I got that not from field work and film work, but it was outside of the building, like playing bowling or going hiking, and I always just really thought that was crazy that we got closer doing that than doing the hours here. Have you experienced when it comes to offensive linemen, is it the other way? Is it outside the building? Is it in the film room, or is it on the field?
I'd say all the above, right? Okay. I mean, you need to be on the same page when you're playing, I think, more than any position, right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, you could say, right? I mean, look at a corner, right? If you get beat, you still have a safety to help you, right? But as an offensive lineman, if it's 5-man protection, most of the time you don't have a guy to help you. If you get beat, one guy messes up or one guy goes the wrong way, that play is dead, because defender's in the backfield, and even if the defender doesn't make the tackle, then you got a million defenders right around him. And so film, right, first of all, I think you got to be cohesive, that everybody knows they're going the right way. Everybody knows the calls. Because the best offensive lines I played with, right, because I played on one Joe Moore winning offensive line. And my sophomore year, I think we should have won the Joe Moore, but we're finalists for it at Michigan. And, I think the biggest thing then is you watch, and that year we didn't have to really say much. We just knew what we were doing. Yeah. The play was called. We could just look at the defense. We could make one call, and just everybody's on the same page. And that's the best offensive lines. But a lot of that does happen outside the field, because you can trust the guy next to you. Yeah, because I can watch as much film as I want to. But if I don't have a relationship with him and I can't trust him like a brother, then how do I know on his own scheme that I can just leave the guy because I know that he's going to be right there? Right. Yeah. Right? Because that's the biggest thing I think that you see with great offensive lines, is they have so much trust that if they're passing off of the game, they know the guard is going to be there because they've done it 1,000 times and they trust each other so well. Right. And if they're leaving a defender for him to pick up, everything just flows just like this, right? And so I think it's all the above, right? You got to get close in the field, got to get close in the on the field, off the field, and then also, in the classroom, in the football field. Yeah.
That's great stuff. TJ, would you mention him just a little bit ago, the offensive line coach. And when I come to practice, I always go over and watch the offensive line for a little bit. Position that I played, they're like the most important people on the field for me. Right. Because I needed to trust that I could drop back and somebody wasn't coming from my backside to hit me in the back of the head. And I've loved watching TJ work with that O-line. Take us into your mindset of working with TJ. What's he like to work with? What do you like about what TJ does, and what have you learned from him so far?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Woods he was one of the biggest reasons that I committed to BYU. And, he's been such a huge help since I've been here. And Coach Woods is intense. He really is. I mean, I think you've seen it at practice. He's intense. He's going to get on you. If you mess up, he's really going to coach you hard. But he's also going to love you really hard too. And with Coach Woods, one thing I sensed just immediately from him is, I could sense that he was intense even on the phone with him recruiting. But I also just sensed his sense of urgency to win. And that's the reason that he was intense, because he wanted us to be the best, because he loved us and cared about us and cares so much about BYU football. And that's the type of guy I want to play with, because he's going to go out to war. He's going to prepare you to go out to war. And he would do anything to throw a helmet on and be out there with us, right, if he could. And that's why he prepares us as well as he can, gets us excited as we can be. And, nobody in that building works harder than Coach Woods. He's in there earlier than everyone else, later than everyone else, studying film to make sure that we're 100% prepared. And then we're going to get on the field, and he's going to expect us that we're 100% giving that same dedication that he is. And that's what I love. I don't care if a coach is yelling at me because he wants me to be great, right? Because he's going to push me to be great, and I love that about Coach Woods.
That's good stuff. You're the only member of the BYU football team that has a championship ring currently. Do you feel like, having been through that and been through the experience of beating TCU and winning a national championship, is there a leadership role that you can take to help navigate this group to that over the next 2 years to get a chance to play for something like that?
Yeah, I hope so, right? I've been trying to fill that role, and I think the biggest thing too is you have to realize every team's a little different, right? I will say that Michigan team was just different guys, right? Different guys than we have here at BYU. We had a lot of, guys that had been in that program with Coach Harbaugh for so long and had done that. But at the end of the day, right, it is all about, hey, there's a lot of principles that I try to bring with me from Michigan, right? I'd say the biggest thing is just you had a mentality that you were going to win, right? You had a mentality. I just remember that season. We walked on the field, and there was never a time that season when I was like, oh, man, we might lose this game. Even in Alabama in the Rose Bowl. Going back to your earlier question, I will say the Rose Bowl is probably my favorite venue. If you're talking
there you go.
We're talking neutral site games.
And I've been to a Rose Bowl to watch Stanford play against Iowa.
Yeah, so Rose Bowl 100%.
Yeah, great environment.
Great environment. But even that Rose Bowl game where we go to overtime against Alabama, we had to have a last-minute drive. And even in that moment, it just never felt like we were going to lose the game. It never did, because it just always felt like we were in control, that we controlled our destiny, that no matter what happened, we were still going to find a way to win. And that's what it felt like every game, right? You just walked in. And I think that season, I'd have to look up the numbers, but I think in the regular season, we trailed for less than 5 minutes the whole season or something like that.
Just never even entered your mind that you could possibly lose a game.
Never, right? And that's just the mentality that we walked in with. And that's the mentality you have to win a national championship. Not a cockiness level, but at the end of the day, just a confidence that you walk in there and it's a real thing.
And Belo's been on you've been around a couple 11-win teams. Yeah. We had a run back when I was playing where we lost to Baylor on the road in our opener. Then we won 11 straight and beat Missouri in our bowl. Then we won 13 straight and beat Michigan to win a national championship. And then we won 27 in a row. And during the middle of that, I remember walking out thinking, we might never, ever lose again. We may never lose a football game the rest of our lives. And when you play with that little bit of swag, you get down in a game or something bad happens. It's like, that's okay. We come back from these. This is what we do. And did you feel that on that Michigan team?
100%. And I remember Coach Harbaugh, he said something really interesting at the start of that season. He said, everybody talks about what are you going to do when you face adversity? He's like, you know what, guys? Let's just not face adversity this year.
I love that. That was his thing. I love that mentality.
He was like, let's just not do it. He's like, we don't have to bounce back from anything if we just don't face it. Yeah, and all of us were kind of like, huh. He's like, but if you expect it, obviously you're going to hit it. And we're like, it's a good point. Nobody, really taught it that way before.
That's a great. It's a great character trait to bring. So, I hope you can bring that mentality to this team. And I think they got in the role with that last year, where they felt like we can beat anybody anytime. We're not going to lose. So it's good stuff. BYU offensive lineman Andrew Gentry on the Wise Guys, presented by Brady Plus, Eddie, and Mountain America Credit Union. I think it's time for 5 questions for Andrew Belo. And you do so. We do these 5 questions for people to get to know you. I feel like we've got a great chance to know you. Right. But this is like some stuff outside of football that we ask, and the first thing that comes to your head, you just answer it, and Brian's going to take you through it.
But outside of football, but it's football. It's a football concept. It's 2-minute drill. You have 0 timeouts left. So, first thing that comes to your mind, just say it. Because that gets us.
Now we see inside your mind.
We're getting the real. You want the real?
Yeah, the real Andrew Gentry right here.
Exactly. Okay. Number 1, favorite sports movie.
Blindside.
Ooh, he starts good. I like this.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2, favorite singer or band.
Ooh, I would have to say right now Zach Bryan. I love listening to Zach
country.
Bryan.
There you go.
Country,
Okay.
Yep.
Number 3, favorite breakfast cereal.
Ooh, this is a tough one.
That's tough. You can take the time a little bit.
Take time a little bit on that one.
Yeah.
This is going to probably surprise, but I'm a super classic. I love Honey Bunches of Oats. If
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. Number 4, favorite thing about offensive line coach TJ Woods.
Intensity. Yeah.
Hey,
intensity and competitiveness.
Okay. 5, last one. Favorite sports moment.
The Rose Bowl in 2023 at Michigan. 100%. Yeah.
And what? Okay. In that moment, at the overall moment, give me a moment within that moment.
I would say, honestly, after we get that stop on 4th down, right? 4th and 2. I mean, really just it's basically a 2-point conversion at that point, right? We stop when we win. They get it. They get a chance to go and win the game or tie the game. And that moment, though, when we get that stop, that moment just lives in my head, replays. I can pull it up at any moment, right? It feels like I'm still there. But just that, because we kind of the last couple of years been to the semifinals and lost the last 2 years in a row, so kind of felt like we broke that curse and got over the hump. And I'll be honest too, going into that game, we knew that if we beat Alabama, we were going to smoke Washington.
Yeah. You just felt you'd win that national championship.
Yeah, we knew. I guess it was Washington or Texas, but just the way we matched up, we knew that Alabama. I'll be honest, that year, if you go back and look, they were the best team in that playoff besides us. We knew that game was more so. But then you combine it with the venue of being the Rose Bowl, being a night game. There was nothing like it. So I pray and hope that BYU comes back to a Rose Bowl this year, because there's never been anything in my life that compares to that sports moment.
Let's see. And that one could be, we were going through that earlier. You were here when we were talking about it. So Rose Bowl's a quarterfinal game on January 1st. It's a 2 p.m. game, so it's not going to be a night game.
True.
But that could be okay, right?
Oh, yeah.
That'd be just fine.
I'd be just fine with that.
That's fine in that, in that area, too, right? In that time,
so
that's fine.
I hope Andrew, sometime in this next 2 years, not only do you get to get back to the Rose Bowl and do that, but that you get to win another national championship.
Yeah, I hope and pray too.
That'd be really, really cool.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. And then that would make you unique. The only one that does that is like our Cougarettes. They just go win them every year. They have like 20 something. So, but outside of that, and our cross country team.
I wonder if there's
our cross country team just goes and wins the national championship every year.
Yeah, they do.
Men's and women's both won it last year.
Yeah.
So, but football, that'd be something to have 2 national championships in football with 2 different teams. There's not. I don't know.
Last year there was one.
Was there somebody that had one too?
Yeah, which it's funny that there's a guy, but one of my teammates from Michigan transferred to Ohio State after.
My goodness,
he beat you. Yeah.
That's not, but that would be so unique in sports. So we're hoping and praying for that for you.
I am too.
That'd be really cool. Awesome. We hope you can help lead this team and help them realize their potential. It'd be great.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, thanks so much for coming on with us. And,
thanks so much for having me.
And we're glad to have you. And I know that our folks out there all across the world are glad to have a chance to get to know you. Lots of fun things. Russ Paul says, Gentry came to my ward, Naperville First Ward, and he looked much bigger than 6'7", 315. I bet his neck was bigger than my thigh. Not that I'm that built. So, and then one person said, hey, can Andrew grace us and use his ability to speak Spanish as an advantage on the football field?
Oh, man. My Spanish isn't as good as it used to be when I was on my mission. Or I'm Spanish, or I'm Utah Spanish.
Or I'm Utah Spanish.
As good as Mexico Spanish.